Good morning and welcome to Brandenburg News Network. I am Donna Brandenburg, and it's the 29th day of May 2025. Welcome to our show today. First off, we're going to be starting out with the nonsense going on with the DNR in the state of Michigan, which is pretty much on one of my top of the list issues here, because y'all know how I feel about this. All right, the DNR is completely off the rails, and them start having the audacity to even start anything named Eagle, which is about energy, having to do with our natural resources, was absolutely, completely wrong, off the rails, and the legislature sat there and did nothing. And then after that, or along with that, Shawn Starry is going to be on, and you guys know that Shawn is one of my favorite people to talk to on here, and we get into all sorts of things like survival, music, encouragement, and that sort of thing. I did want to bring something up right now that should be of concern to everyone. I'm going to go through the tariffs and the tariff and obstruction that's going on right now and where the real problem is. I've done quite a bit of research on this and trying to come up with some answers on how to address the problems that we're having right now with the obstructionists in office who are violating both due process as well as they're violating due process, but they're also violating things like, say, separation of powers, weaponizing agencies, the whole 10 yards. I mean, they're doing all of it. The U.S. Court of International Trade ruling that deems the majority of President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, which went into effect April 5, as unlawful. Now, with that said, there's an awful lot more to this story than what meets the eye, including the weaponization of bureaus, departments, as well as people overstepping their jurisdiction instead of staying on the rails of their job descriptions. They are literally completely off the rails. The only way to fix this is nullification of all of these agencies, which do not exist in a constitutional republic, as well as imposing a great deal of putting the bit in their mouth and pulling back on those reins and saying, yeah, no way, this is not happening. They're not paying attention to what is lawful. They just go, they throw things against the wall and hope it sticks. And so we're going to go through this too a little bit further. But I'm going to say right now that the GOP, which is in control of the House, is absolutely at fault with this. You cannot just sit back and let things happen. It's part of their job is to defend the Constitution and our rights, and that none of them are doing anything. This is a constitutional issue, period. End of story. And they're all getting caught up in the civil action jurisdiction right now. So until we start talking about this more, we've got a problem. I'd like to go into this further, but I'm not sure if I start where I'm going to stop. But I'm going to just say that I'm getting ready to launch the Brandenburg Files, which is going to be a little hard for them to get away from, because it'll have all the documentation and everything behind it on why they're off the rails, what they've done to subvert the law, the Constitution, and then ideas on how to get it back in place. So, for example, President Trump could propose targeted recessions to fund trade priorities, securing more GOP votes. So a lot of this has to do with the power that's already in place, pulling it back and saying, that's fine, you can do whatever you want. However, I'm going to refuse to fund it, or I'm going to put roadblocks into funding of the unconstitutional measures that Congress has put in place. There are ways of doing it, and holding them accountable needs to happen, but it needs also to happen from every single one of us out there. And that's where I stop right now, and we're going to get to the show. Morning, guys. How you doing?
Doing good.
Awesome. Well, I'd like an update from especially Shane and Guy on exactly what's going on up there at Trout Lake, because it sounds like the DNR, they're lying their ever-living tails off, and we have violations of what they're supposed to be doing and what they're really doing. I can add to this conversation a little bit, but let's just do a local update on their lying.
Okay, well, they've every Monday and Friday they come out and they poll stop logs out of this dam that they in January had suggested they were going to remove. In February, we launched a campaign against the removal and to force them to repair it. We've had a few meetings, public meetings, involving what they said they were going to do, what they're allowed to do, how much money they have available, blah, blah, blah. And since then, it's just been a big, like they'll put a permit in to do work on the dam, do the work without the permit being addressed, and then pull the permit. They're pulling more than 6 inches a day out of the lake, which is regulation when a drawdown occurs. They haven't relocated any of the living anything. They just started drawing the lake down. They're not taking into account, and they actually have admitted that they're not going to and haven't done any sort of studies as far as environmental impact or wildlife impact. And there's so much going on out there. It's so natural that there's animals that are endangered that frequent this area, this lake, these campgrounds. There's so much involved in what they're doing that if you and I in the public sector was to do anything close to what they're doing, they would already have skinned us alive and poured salt on our wounds.
Well, they're a criminal organization. I mean, when we were up there and we were talking and walking around, seeing exactly what they did, besides their absolute deception on what it would cost to repair the dam or what it's worth. I mean, this seems like 20 feet across at the top. And you can see where they were drawing this down to intentionally. You can't come to any other conclusion than they were intentionally attempting to damage that dam by bringing it 4 feet in one day. There's no way they can get outside of that because A, they were breaking the law, and B, we've got enough evidence of people that have testimony to the dam shaking because of how fast they threw that thing down.
Well, and they threw some of the stop logs that they pulled on the first day down into the dam to shoot out into the creek. No. So I think they were intentionally trying to puncture the pipe with one of the boards or stop it up, something to cause the quote-unquote inspection to fail.
Yeah, you bet they were. And then on top of this, going right back to the legislature again, and I'm so disgusted with the people that are in office right now. There's no words to describe my absolute, I don't know, I'm furious about this because they sit there and they're letting this happen. This is under Gretchen Whitmer. The DNR is under Gretchen Whitmer. They are doing, and then in my studies here, Melissa, you good?
Yep.
In my studies here, and what we found that was suspect to me, I'm going to just throw it out there and tell you what I found, is that the clear cutting that I'm seeing that is anything over about 5-6 inches, they're literally cutting everything up there and they're blocking off trails. So one of the violations is they're violating our right to the land we own. They've claimed all mineral rights, all logging rights. And guess what? They're shipping these things to bio power conductors. And it ties into a company that's for profit, that's doing the same thing that Nestle is doing. It's a for-profit company tied into New York State that is profiting off of our resources. We're not even profiting from it in the state. Gretchen Whitmer needs to be immediately removed for violation of anything. I mean, she's the top dog on this. She's the top dog on destroying our resources and turning it into a for-profit energy nonsense. I gotta. There, Shawn, it's your sound again. I had to mute you there. You got a lot of background sound there. The absolute disregard for protecting the natural resources. And I mean, I can bring up the constitutional basis of what they're supposed to be doing. It doesn't include energy. It doesn't include destruction of this. Their number one responsibility is to protect our interest, which we own, not them to exploit for public-private partnerships or do energy. And if they were actually doing anything in the energy sector that was benefiting us, why is it that we just had so about 500 and I don't know, Exxon, $517 million of proposed grants and such that went to the energy sector, which includes an 11.1 hike in the rates of people of Michigan. You tie that back to Jennifer, the criminal Granholm, who's used her influence and dumped $22 billion into the energy sector as soon as she was about ready to leave office to hope that they could weather the Trump administration's cuts and such. They dispersed this as basically a way to fund these companies in order to weather the Trump cuts. $14 billion went to Michigan. I'm telling you what, Michigan is the head of the snake here.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. It's disgusting. Seems that the agenda is following right along with a globalist plan to control and rule with the binary justice system. Rules for thee, but not for me. It's disgusting.
Well, I've got a list that Heidi sent me, and then you sent me also the violations that they are guilty of right now. Let's see, Part 307, Inland Lakes levels, Part 315, dam safety, MCL 324.30700, Act 451, Section 324.30106. Let's see. Rule R281-814, Part 303 and Part 301. We have got so many violations. And you know what? I think this is one of those things that the DNR at this point in time needs to be abolished in its current state. It is absolutely nothing more than a weaponized agency under Gretch the Wretch Whitmer, who does nothing and lets them roll over this state and pilfer everything.
Well, they're darn sure not following the mission statement on their website. There's nothing about that is true.
That's absolutely right. You know, let me see if I can pull that up a minute. I started trying to move this forward, and so we can see the rules that are on the books here for what's going on. The other problem we have is they've got the Michigan Trust Fund, which Natural Resources Trust Fund, and this is right here. This is in the Constitution. When you read exactly what they've done to basically get around the original Constitution, it becomes really it's a coordinated effort against and layering the laws in order to break the law. The same thing with the Bible. When God gave us 10 commandments, the next thing you know, we've got 648 more rules, and you're always in violation. So they can play games with us through the Michigan bar, through the courts, through all of these I don't know what to say, organizations. What's that?
Different avenues.
Yeah.
To pull the rug off from underneath you.
Yeah. As of May 20, 2025, the DNR is not considering putting the logs back in Trout Lake Dam. The DNR's plan is to remove the dam entirely due to safety and ecological concerns. They're the concern.
They're actually creating more ecological damage by draining this lake than they are allowing this small creek to flow. I mean, it flows anyways. It's constantly flowing. There's always water coming from the hills, filling these lakes. It's the only thing that fills these lakes is from the hills. There's no streams. There's no other tributaries. And their reasonings behind them wanting to remove this makes no sense. I mean, at its highest, it's a 25, maybe 28-acre lake. And there's always constant water flow coming from the springs around the hills. And so, with the way this dam is built, it's not going to get any higher than a certain level, and then it's going to spill right into the creek anyways. There's no stopping the water, and there's nothing between the dam itself and probably 10 miles of forest that's going to get damaged if this dam structure, quote unquote, fails. It's just a cube with one side that has top logs in it. And their complaint was that the logs were bad. And so they wanted to drain it down to get to the bad logs and then replace them. But then suddenly we get this information on the 25th that was broadcast about them not even wanting to put the boards back in, even though all the correspondence we've received from them since they started pulling the first logs earlier this spring has been all for inspection to repair and replace purposes. We've had different correspondence via Jeff Jolly, Doug Schultz, Ed Eiche, Joy from Eagle. Our state representatives are trying to work with them.
Ron Olson.
Yep. And they all, every single one of them, tell us a different story. And all they want us to do is just kind of sit back and let them do their jobs, okay, without scrutinizing them. Well, now they're under major scrutiny, and so they're going to try to sneak this in under the rug.
Well, that's what they always do. It's all about, their native tongue is lying. And they tell us, because wasn't it like a week and a half ago or so, they said because of public outcry, they were going to save the dam. And then all of a sudden, when people said, well, this is fantastic, they're doing the right thing, then all of a sudden they changed their story again because I really got to tell you, there's got to be a lawsuit involved in this personally, the people involved. And I've been combing through documents and such, trying to figure out what's the best way to sue them because you can't do it in the court system because they're all in bed together. So you've got to do it through, you've got to leave the Michigan bar out because first of all, they don't have a license to practice law. It's a private membership organization by a bunch of good old boys who are as criminal as the Congress and everything else. They're obstructionists.
Yep. Binary justice system.
I'd really like to see the county executives or the county board weigh in on this. Have they done anything or said anything about this?
They're trying to correspond directly and through the state rep, Mike Hoadley. they're, I don't know, like I had mentioned to you before, they seem to be timid, very timid. I'm not sure exactly what DNR or the state holds over them other than money and maybe some sort of, I'm not sure, but it's like everyone seems to be afraid to even look at this and see the criminality involved. And they're not really reacting to it like I would expect them to. You know what I mean? We're trying, we're working with them to try to get their, how do I say this? Grow their testosterone a little. You know what I mean?
I'm really curious on why so many people are so afraid to step up. It sure seems like there's an awful lot of when they turn around, you got to wonder how much blackmail and how much coercion or threat is.
Well, I mean, living in the woods, being around people that live in the woods that are pretty much directly affected by the DNR. These people can walk right up on your property without warrant. They can kick your door in without warrant. They can confiscate anything they want without warrant. They don't answer to anybody but the governor. And they're not voted in. They don't like have any sort of qualified immunity to lose. Otherwise, as far as if they're caught doing something wrong against our violating our rights or whatever, it's frustrating. But there's got to be a way to hold them accountable.
Let's look at her own little private Gestapo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mafia.
And do you know how this devolved and how they got the power that they have?
Well, at one time, every county had their own fishery and their own power supply, whether it be hydroelectric or coal power. And the DNR was put together by the state. I don't remember the exact date. But from that point on, since the DNR was put into place, the state has been able to go through and land grab and get control of most all the dams and all the vacant property, the state public land that we pay our taxes on, is all under their thumb, and they just do whatever they want with it. As far as how they've received the amount of power that they have, it's on whoever's sitting in the governor's chair.
Well, this is really interesting because it says, I just looked it up, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources traces its origin back to 1887 when the state created the position of state game warden to oversee wildlife conservation. Over time, the agency evolved, becoming the Department of Conservation in 1920 and later reorganized as the Michigan Department of Natural Resources in 1965. So the 1887 is a significant date.
Right.
There was so much manipulation that happened
and then
right
it
around.
became MDEQ, didn't it?
Eagle is actually a DEQ.
Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and now it's the energy, correct? They've slipped energy in there. So
right.
Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, MDEQ, was the state's environmental regulatory agency until it was rebranded as Michigan Department of Environmental, Great Lakes, and Energy. I don't even understand how they could have taken this away from the counties, having a power source, fisheries, etc., and once again, collectivism, bringing it into state control when it should be local control.
It's all about one world government. This is a plan that's been implemented for a long time, and piece by piece by piece by piece, this is what they're doing, and this is how this started way back a long time ago with this plan. And we're so ignorant, as far as the masses are concerned, because we got so much else going on. We have all this entertainment, and we have all this quote unquote 24/7 news, the cycles, the distraction. We got the division created by everything that they want us to be divided by. There's just so much going on that the common person doesn't even look at this, which is, at the depth of all of it, going to destroy the economy and starve us out pretty much.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. It sure is a concerted effort. So, well, let's see. I'm gonna bring Shawn back in here and start your microphone up. Do you have a printer going in the background? There's a lot of background noises there.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, what's your thoughts on this, Shawn? I mean, Shawn was Special Forces. And he's been in watching the nonsense behind the scenes for a long time, and this is so systemic across our entire government with these infiltrators that I can't even imagine what President Trump is facing right now to try to take this rot out of the government.
Well, my thoughts on this is that, it sounds like they use a lot of the Chevron difference to get what they want. But they're also using Chevron difference to absorb and make these agencies like they want, instead of having. That's how they're taking power away from the counties, from separate independent powers. I would almost say that, if every county were to get together and sue the state as a whole, they could win and they could overturn a lot of things if they were just to get together. But
the problem is the counties are staffed with people that are complicit in it too.
Right. And so that's why, everyday Americans, I put a tweet out earlier this morning, and I said, like with everything that's going on, especially in Congress, and it's like I mentioned before, we have Congress who is, it's the same coin. It's just two different sides. You got the Republican and the Democrat, right? With the two-party rule. And that's been the problem that we've had for so long. So if everyday ordinary Americans were to go and run for these positions, say for county, say for Congress or whatever, but let's just say I'll focus on Congress here. We have 535 positions within Congress. Okay, and if ordinary everyday people like, say, yourself, myself in the state of Illinois, and other people, just ordinary people, go and run, and we had 370 million Americans donate $1 to all 535 candidates. Okay, so that's on an average of $535 for all 370 million Americans. Just a small investment. We would have enough money for a campaign. We could win every single campaign as American First backed agenda. No parties, just American back agenda, right? We could go into Congress. We could literally overturn so much of this corruption to begin with. And not just on the federal level, we could do it on the state level as well.
Well, I tell you, this is a great segue, because I am, in fact, the chairman of the Constitution Party in Michigan, which is the U.S. Taxpayers Party, because Benson is using obstructionist tactics to try to stop us from changing our name to match the National Party. But luckily, there's still ways of getting things done in the court system, and they're having to deal with some legal action by Donna Brandenburg right now in order to stop this. But I'm just going to say right now, if you're out there listening to this, we have our meeting this weekend on Saturday, and I invite you to come because we've got to see candidates outside of the worthless GOP, the worthless Democrat Party, and we don't take the foreign money, so we're the only ones out there. And I'll burn it to the ground if that ever gets brought up. I'll burn the whole party to the ground because we are not going to break the law and become a threat. We're going to work our way out of this. And I'm going to invite everyone, please run for office. Come and talk to us. Y'all have my phone number. You can get a hold of me so that we can actually keep people in these offices from top to bottom in the state.
I definitely agree. I think everyday Americans need to start running for these offices. I think we need to, it's kind of like that old saying back in the day. We used to hang those brass balls on the back of our truck. We need to be like that. We need to go out there and do what's right, not because of money or power or prestige or popularity or whatever. We just need to go out there and do what's do what's right, because our children are going to inherit this future. At some point, I'm going to get old, I'm going to die, and my biggest fear is, what am I leaving behind for my kids? Especially when it comes to conservation. I'm a big arborist. I love trees. I know everything about trees and bushes and things like this. And even where I live, I've had to deal with situations where we've had massive flooding on the east side of our town. And the reason being is because our city officials here for decades have decided that they were going to cut down all these trees on the east side and build all these new development projects. And what had happened was, we're right on a snake bed. And the Army Corps of Engineers in 1933 went to every single place in America wherever there was a snake bed on the river and told the city officials or county officials, do not develop in those areas. Why? Because those are flood prone areas. And just go and just turn that into a green space. Just plant nothing but pine trees or trees that absorb a lot of water. And what do? They cut that red tape, because why? They wanted to build more houses so they can put more people in there and collect more money for taxes.
And money laundered to the developers. They're money laundering to these developers.
On top of that, that probably had a lot to do with the water traffic that would be allowed on a bend, and the fact that you could actually, because a bend is commonly a wider area in the river than a straight line, right? So it's potentially the thought of trafficking was involved in that also.
Yeah,
they wanted to bypass the rules or the suggested. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to tell you, you said it, so I'm going to say it stronger. I think they're involved in human trafficking and trafficking on state lands as well as the rivers. I really think that that's one of the main functions of the DNR right now, is that they're using these lands that we have no access to. And I think if we really got into this, you'd find out that the criminal element in the government is using this to traffic children, and part of the human trafficking elements that are going on right now.
Well, I can tell you from firsthand experience working down in a deep underground military base, there's a lot of trafficking going on in those places as well. People don't understand. If I could tell you every little detail that has ever happened in places like that, I'm telling you right now, we would end up in an actual physical revolution. This is how serious this is.
Well, why don't you start it off? Let's just start it off right now, Shawn. Tell us what's going on.
So understand that they have taken our tax dollars. We're talking, around $200 trillion. This is what I estimated it at. $200 trillion to build these underground dumps. Okay. Now, what is the original intent why they wanted to build the underground dumps? It was for the continuity of government. That's it. Okay. But however, we get into the 90s, this is when they start taking money And this is where money that disappeared. That they figured out how to basically send that money out with no accountability, right? Like what Elon Musk was talking about, we had trillions of dollars that went missing. We don't know where it went. There's no signature on it. There's no.
Rumsfeld said the same thing.
Mm-hmm. So, and I've had the experience once where I've actually stopped a sex trafficker. I've had the experience of actually placing a handcuff on a guy, arresting him, and understand what is their modus operandi, how do they operate. And if you go back and think about the psychology of them, they operate on the same functionality level as government officials do. Okay. They can literally have no remorse and no fear.
They're psychopaths.
Exactly. And so how do you deal with, and this is another thing too. A lot of our system has changed for decades. And one was the psychology department, a lot of psychology teaching. Okay. But there used to be things in place in schools where teachers learned us how to identify someone who was a potential, a serial, could be a potential serial psychopathic killer one day, right? And that is one key core element is they have no empathy. Okay. So when they're doing something, they hit somebody, they do something, and then afterwards you scold them, you discipline them, and they show no emotions. Huge red flag, right? Well, then the liberals came in and they said, oh, we're going to use this. So they started stripping away the education. They've got to get rid of the education in order to control the masses. Then they went after the family unit, get the father out of the picture. Why? Because the father is the most aggressive being that's going to do everything he can to protect his family. Well, when you start putting them in jail, getting them out of the picture, and then you entice the women with all this welfare and child support, what happens? Their lives fall apart, churches fell apart, and pretty soon you got a society of nothing but individuals. Now you have absolute control over these people, and then you can pretty much do whatever you want. And so this is where child sex trafficking comes into place, human trafficking, organ harvesting, taking our tax dollars and building these huge underground domes that are literally connected to one another. There's 2,200. We own 2,200 around the world, 1,600 here in the U.S. They're all run by a maglev train system. It's a train that operates on a magnetic levitation, and you can go from New York to San Francisco in about, I want to say, an hour maybe. So it goes pretty fast. And some of these places and these dumps are so huge. I'll give you a good example, like the one in Site 122 is outside of Chicago. It's 3 times bigger than the city of Chicago. And it can house Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago. Take all the residents, and you can fill that dump with that, and you still have enough room for, say, another city of 100,000 people.
Let me ask you this: how many people are down there on a daily basis? Because you've worked in the dumps, and you know what? I just got to tell everybody, I'm fairly skeptical about everything because I'm that person. I will listen to everything, but I don't disbelieve or believe. I just listen. But when Shawn talks about this, you are absolutely consistent every single time. There's no variation in your story. And I just really appreciate that. So how many people are literally down there?
So as far as I know from the staff that is staffed there, it's about 1,500 people. There's a lot. There's a lot of the dumps, the aspects of the dumps that it's not being used. I'll give you a good example. We have a full-size mall down there. It's about 4 times bigger than the Mall of America. This is how big it is.
What?
It's sitting there empty. I kid you not. There's a fucking McDonald's there. There's Burger King. There's literally everything you can imagine. It's all there, and this is not including the food that they have been getting from all of the companies that mass produce foods for us. They produce the food for us with the chemicals in it. But all the food that they've mass produced for the dumps, they're all without the chemicals, without the poison, without the red dye number 40, and they use the different agencies. I'll give you a good example. So they use the FDA, CDC, they use the one with the farm deal. And what they do is they have one agency go to the next agency and say, okay, well, we need to get, say mac and cheese. We need to get, let's say 160 pallets of mac and cheese. Well, they'll go to the mac and cheese company, Kraft company, and they'll basically say, well, we found salmonella in your mac and cheese. Now, I'll give you an idea how the production works. So this year, starting in January, they're mass producing all of the mac and cheese for the next year. So in January, they start mass producing it all the way up into December. Now, what happens is all that stuff gets, put into packages. They get saran wrapped onto a pallet, and it sits at the very end of the warehouse, which is would be the front of the warehouse. And so that's January, February, March, April, May, and so on. By the time they get to December, it's towards the back of the warehouse. Now, January comes, December comes, they start getting all these pallets. They take them out to certain destinations. Well, the government would come in and say, well, we're condemning your entire warehouse full of mac and cheese because it's got salmonella in it. Now, did they actually send any inspectors there to check it? No, they don't. They don't do that. Instead, they make accusations. They use the court systems. They come in there with paperwork, and the drivers. Now, catch this. So the drivers are given a contract, what's called a blind contract. They're just told to go there, pick up the stuff, and then when they take it down to the dumps, they back it up to a kind of a spot. There's an elevator, and there's 3 or 4 what they call skid loaders or pallets. Yeah. And they'll go in and they'll start pulling everything out, and they put them in this huge elevators, and then they'll take them down to usually about the 5th floor of the dumps. I've been down in there. Okay, I'm going to give you an idea how big this warehouse is full of food. You take the length of Chicago, going from the beginning to the end, north to the south side of Chicago, about 4 to 10. I would say about 4 to 10 stadiums wide. The whole thing is completely full of food, nonstop. There's enough.
How old are all these tunnels and such? I mean, here's another question. I've been watching them building. They're building a structure over in China. Mm-hmm. And it is like it's going to be like it's like they're going to be their new Pentagon, right? Only it doesn't go underground very far, which is odd. And they're doing work underground, and I'm thinking this above ground Pentagon thing is just a decoy of some sort, because I don't believe of any. And I think it's kind of like this paper tiger thing, because whatever the globalists have is underground far enough that they're in the openings to get into there are far enough away that they're going to have the targets right out in the open, but whatever is legitimate is not going to be there.
Right. So it's kind of like this, they're going to leak this to the news, right? And they're going to say, oh, look, they've got this little underground dump, right? You and I both know that underground dumps, they go very, very deep. It's not like close to the surface. But while you're looking at this, over here, they're actually constructing the dumps in places that you wouldn't even think to look twice, right?
Right.
I've got a good friend of mine who got me turned on to Google, where they do the Google Maps. They do the live Google Earth thing, and then you just go down, and basically it's Google is actually just more or less a spy satellite that they made a commercial for us to use, and you can get a really good idea of where stuff is. If you look long enough, you could find it. But a lot of these areas, I will tell you, when you get to some areas and they're completely blurred out, that's because those are government installations. They don't want you to see what's going on there, right? So,
let's tie this back to Michigan here too, and what's going on with the DNR and the thug force of the DNR. And how do you guys have like any ideas of what would you do? I've been looking for like solutions on what would people do in order to stop them dead in their tracks. So like legally, I'm looking into different strategies to stop them. One of the things that came up is proposed legislation in the Michigan House of Representatives and Senate to repeal or amend enabling both statutes for both agencies, EGLE and the DNR. The DNR's authority seems to stem from the Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, NREPA, of 1994, and various executive orders, while EGLE was established through Executive Order Number 1995-18 as the Department of Environmental Quality, and reorganized under another executive 2019, Gretchen the Criminal Whitmer. And so repealing or amending these things, and this is something that the legislators could do, but the other thing that should be brought that the legislators need to do is the DNR cannot do any product or project without their oversight approval before, not just the fact that they tear into these things. And this is where these people don't even know their jobs. So our legislature in Michigan should be saying, hold on, we're going to put a complete injunction against anything you're doing right now, because we've not even had a chance to look at this, which means that they've abdicated their responsibility in oversight to this department.
Well, one idea I had was if you were to sue the state legislators for not doing their job or doing the oversight, that would get their attention to go and actually do their job, number one. But number two, if there was enough photo or video evidence of this, what was being construction or not done, or what they're not supposed to be doing or what they're supposed to be doing, involved in that lawsuit on how to show that the state lawmakers are not doing their oversight jobs, then they would have to be forced to say, well, we're lazy or something, I'm saying it would ultimately bring this to light to the public, and the public can go, well, okay, we got a public census, and obviously, state's not doing their job. Well, why? And maybe force some kind of a censure to force them to answer that question. Why aren't they doing their job? Why aren't they, going to the DNR and say, hey, why are you building these projects? Who authorized this? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, that's a top-down situation. The governor's not doing their job. The oversight committee's not doing their job. State legislature's not doing their job. The county municipalities aren't doing their job. That leaves it up to us, the people. And so we got to struggle to find a way to afford and to have enough cojones to stand together and smack them where they deserve to be smacked and put them in their place.
Yeah.
Well, Scott Bowen, and you look at he's the director of the DNR, and I think when you start looking at these people that are in place and checking out their backgrounds, we did kind of a little bit of a rundown on who's on the board, the board of the DNR and such, because they're running it like a corporation. It's absolutely been being run like a corporation, not a state, not even a state department that is supposed to be protecting it. They've turned it into an economic treasure chest for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like what, like here in Freeport, for decades, they were purposely allowing and setting up the constant flooding on the east side of town, because at one point, we had city councilmen coming together and talking about how they wanted to use eminent domain to force everybody out. And then they would level everything, and then they would turn that whole thing into a golf course with, housing. We're talking, $250,000 houses and everything else. And the people got together and they said, no, we're not going to let this happen. They filed a censure against the city, said he ended up dropping the whole thing. But that's, just like Grizzly's saying, people need to get together. I mean, just it's summertime now. You're looking for something to do and you want to make a difference. This is the great way to do it.
Yep. Educate yourself. Be aware. Pay attention. Start attending meetings. Get in their face and hold them accountable. Push them to do their jobs. If they don't do their jobs, kick them the hell out their seat and find somebody that wants to do their job and put them back in that seat.
Yeah.
Well, I sure hope everybody considers running for office, because that's not one of those jobs that an everyday Americans such as you guys and myself, people that just go to work every day, it's not one of those things that anybody wants to do. It's not a glory job. It's a crap job for sure.
Right.
But it's our duty, and people have to find it themselves to say, you know what, if nobody else is going to do it, I can trust myself, and I know I'll do the right thing. So you know what?
Right.
I'm going to get in there and give it my best shot. So all I can
Seems
say
like there's a lot of triggers involved in that sort of occupation, and I don't like being triggered. But yeah, I get you. We definitely need to focus on educating the public and our children and our grandchildren on the right way to do this.
Well, what's real sad is that people don't even know the what the jobs entail anymore. It's like I'm in office so I can do whatever I want to do, instead of what's the job description and stay within it. So we end up even electing people that are career politicians,
Right.
instead of somebody who actually knows how the country's run and how it's supposed to be run. We have everything we need just right with our neighbors and our families and friends. I mean, we don't have to be experts. We just got to be willing.
Yeah.
Well, it's so much more important for the country to know who Taylor Swift is dating than it is to actually understand how the system works and do it correctly. And that's the thing, with our mass media, that box on the wall, that gets our attention because that's how we're, formed. We've been since they brought that into the house way a long time ago. This is how we learn how to live. Everything our Leave It to Beaver lifestyles, that false fallacy situation. Our comfort zone needs to be shattered in order for us to understand the true depths and how to go about dealing with it. And so many people are still in this blissful, ignorant situation. Where if something was to get their attention just enough to want them to look into it. I wanted to bring something up and ask a question really quick. Speaking about the dumbs, Central Park, a handful of years ago, that's what was going on there too, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. There's I will say this, there's a lot of our research bases, but there's others and more. You get into like Area 52, which is the proving grounds. That's where they do a lot of their flight tests and things like that.
Right.
Everybody is big on this whole UFO thing. I love watching UFO documentary because I just kind of laugh my ass off because I really know the truth behind all of that. But people don't understand that these so-called aliens that they've been fantasizing for so long, they're kind of put it in this perspective. This is all biblical. Okay, so this goes back to the days of the Watchers and the Nephilims. And there's Nephilim DNA, Nephilim blood, whatever you want to call it, that's been experimented, not just on human beings, but they've been experimenting on animals and even plants. And they found a way to crossbreed certain things that give a certain look, certain desire, certain effect, a certain kind of a creature. And they've gotta go. Okay, well, we got to distract the public, right? So what people don't understand is that the UFO crash in '47, that was the big distraction that was going on at the time. Because there was other things going on at the time they didn't want the public finding out about, and it was about to be brought into light. And so the whole area, the whole 47 incident was nothing more than to completely distract the entire nation. And then it turned into something else, and they utilized that, and they said, okay, we got this whole UFO phenomena. Well, weird. Okay, I'll put it this way: as far as technology goes, we are 50 to 75 years behind the U.S. government and the military.
Or more, yeah.
Okay. So for decades, people have said, well, oil and gas is the only way that we're going to be able to power up our homes, right? And so we've been living like primates for this whole entire time. Now, down in the dumps, they use 0-point energy generators, okay? Takes no fuel whatsoever. I'm actually right now. I'm in the process of building a company together to.
They still utilize the Aether.
Yeah, and these things are good for 10 years. They weigh 4 pounds. You can pick them up. You can power your entire house with it. It's how stupidly simple it is. But they don't want the public to know. They kept that secret for so.
Why would they? I mean, there's no money involved in us being able to live on a freer level.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And, it's just, and that's something that I'm working on right now, trying to turn everything around. But I understand about this whole mineral war that's been going on between the U.S. and China that Trump's got going on. But it's more about land grabbing is what it comes down to it. But now, keep in mind, though, say 5 years from now, my company becomes successful with the ZPEs and we get them out to the public. Okay. Number one, we're going to solve the entire energy crisis overnight. Okay. Literally just overnight. Everybody's going to be able to afford to pay for a month-to-month lease on these ZPE generators. Okay. So electric companies are going to become a thing of the past. Every house is now, or every building is going to be completely independent, which means computer hackers can't get into it. EMPs cannot affect it. The generators are actually built into the house. So that takes away the government's ability to be able to just go into your home and then regulate that. They can only regulate anything that's on the outside of your home, but not on the inside of your home. And so this really solves also a lot of the national defense side of things too.
Right.
So that's the kind of the aim and the hope. This is what I'm working on with my business partner at the time. He lives down in Texas, but his name is Ryan. He was a J6 prisoner, but so we have this vision of what we're going to try to accomplish. We have the backing from the oil industry, who's going to be investing in us as well. So we're setting up a really good start, a really good path for the future for America on those type of things. But we can only solve one problem at a time.
Right.
And one of the things we understand is, in order to be successful on a large scale, you got to go where the money's at and utilize the support. And then when you can get to that point and go, okay, we've got it, But when it comes to politics, this is something I looked at yesterday. I was reading through every single amendment that was ever ratified. And what got my interest and my attention was I went to Grok and I said, can you tell me what the difference between what's so different about the 16th Amendment compared to all the other ones, right? And the interesting thing is it says right there that the 16th Amendment was politicized, okay, and it was more about the money, whereas all the other amendments, they were more about whatever the situation was going on at the time, say World War, or say the Civil War going on at the time. So when those amendments were being proposed, and it took a long time. 25th Amendment it took almost 200 years. Okay. But the 16th Amendment was literally crammed through as quick as they could. And they did it at nighttime when everybody was sleeping. They did it in the dark. And the problem was that and I've noticed this, is every time they put these amendments together, the procedure by which they go by a lot of times were not done correctly.
Well, yeah, you can look at the 1963 Constitution in the state of Michigan, and that was unlawfully installed. They didn't have the votes. But you can also go back and look at, say, like I'm losing the name here. I'll think about it in a minute. But the Articles of Confederation, then, and see what happened there, and that was also improperly done. So when you look at what my friend Doug Force was involved in up there in Canada, and he just died a couple months ago, which I've got a lot of questions, because the powers that be in the United States, CIA, FBI, told him, leave the United States and never come back, because he proved that the United States was also set up unlawfully right near the beginning. Canada was never properly federated, and you can take that right back to Queen Victoria. The United States was never properly federated the way it is, and there's this misproprieties, and they just kind of gloss over that. Oh, don't look at this. You haven't seen anything. Go back to the bread and circuses and just let us handle that. You don't have to do it. Go play, as they've taken our country over for for themselves. And it's always about the land. It's always about the resources with these parasites.
Yeah.
Right. Truth be told, we'll never really know the truth on how this all came about, because he who has the power writes his story. So everything that we know was written by somebody who had an agenda.
Yeah,
they've been controlling that news media for an awful long time. It's
really long time.
Yeah.
From Kane.
I was telling Donna one time, I said, when I was in high school, my dad, he had his own office, and his whole office was basically his own private library. And I was taking a history class, and we were studying about World War II, about Nazi Germany and Adolf Hitler, right? Well, towards the end of it, they said, well, Adolf Hitler was killed in Nazi Germany just outside of his bunker. And I raised my hand and told the teacher, I said, that's bullshit. That's a lie. And she says, well, what do you mean? I said, I can prove it. I can prove that's a lie. I said, I have an original book written by his autobiographer. At that time, he did not die there. And 2 years later, he had to write a new autobiography that would fit with the agenda of the U.S. government. Okay. And I said, I have the original book. And she said, well, can you bring it to school tomorrow? I said, I'd be happy to. So I went home and asked my dad, and he said, no, that's fine. You can take it. Just make sure you bring it back. I said, okay. So we came into the history class, and I gave her the book, and her mind was blown. She's like, you actually got the book? I said, yes. She said, okay. She stood up and told everybody, today we're going to read. That's all we're going to do. Everybody just be quiet, just read. And she sat down. She read that whole thing in 45 minutes. And then class was leaving. She said, can I hold on to this? And I said, well, get it back to me before school's over. She said, okay. But she went to a copy machine, and she literally copied every single page. And she went through like hundreds of pages just for one page of copies, right? And I went back for my 30th class reunion, and for our state football, we won. I broke records as a defensive end. So, and a lot of us, we went to state, we won a lot of awards and stuff 30 years ago. So they wanted to honor us. So we went back there, and during the daytime, and we're walking in there, and there she is. She's this little itty bitty old lady now. And she remembered me. She come running up to me. She says, hey, I still have your book. I said, what do you mean? She goes, I still have copies. I still make new copies, and I still teach my students the real truth about Adolf Hitler. And she said, the school didn't like it, but you know what? I told them I know what's best because I'm the teacher. And
right.
So, when it comes down to it, it's all about the truth. What are we getting? Are we getting the PG version of Disney or whatever?
Right. Yeah.
And I think this is an important discussion to have. It's just like they've used all these titles. It's like I have no problems with the Jewish people. I've got a big beef with Israel as a country and what's going on there. I'm always amazed at how a country the size of freaking New Jersey and the Gaza Strip, which they're fighting over, which is 4 miles by 20 miles, has got the entire world tied up into knots. And it doesn't make any sense. The amount of aid that's gone over there. And
That was a big, giant distraction.
by 20 miles.
Yeah.
This is, you'd have to like be
They
living on
wanted to look at that because something else was going on by far more important and more powerful. You know, I read this article where there was a little town in Texas that's paying a ton of money in their taxes that goes directly to Israel. And they chose to not, they voted to use that monies instead here at home. And the state governor said, nope, called them anti-Semitic and so on and so forth because they didn't want to give Israel their tax dollars. It was millions of dollars, unbelievable amount of money. I mean, it makes no sense that we live in the richest country in the world, suggestively. Okay. But our borders and our tax dollars aren't being used in this country, but they're going everywhere else and paying for everyone else's safety and lining everyone else's pockets and paying for all this. I mean, all the Black Swan events, everything. If people knew what was happening with their tax dollars out in the open, the masses would just explode with aggressive anger.
Well, and I think
sure of it.
Going to a lot of the big box stores and all of these big corporations like Vanguard, Arabella, State Street Capital, all of them, BlackRock, of course. A lot of them are going there, but when I really do believe that President Trump is working great things behind the scenes. Though they look like it's bad on some of them, but these are cuts and changes that have to happen.
Well, yeah. In order for everything to heal, there's got to be a wound for it to heal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was always told just brush it off, it'll grow back. But I think it needs to be cut off, severed, and then, replaced.
Yeah. Well, it's like our Constitution is very, very abundantly clear.
Yep.
If our government ever becomes tyrannical in any sense, and we have done every legal recourse as possible, okay, it is the right and the duty and the obligations of American citizens to remove those people or remove certain aspects of the Constitution. So, and the problem is that we have been so docile, and I'll tell you why we've been docile. So back in 1947, the U.S. government knew they had a lot of these slush fund projects coming up, and they knew the American people would not agree with it. Okay, so one of the big things that they did was they used fluoride sodium in our water systems. Now, a lot of people think, oh, they put it in our water treatment to treat our water. No, they don't. They treat the water first, and then the water that's going out into the city, that's when they put fluoride sodium in it. And what that does is it calcifies your pineal gland, and it makes you dormant. So when the government says, well, we're going to raise taxes, most people are like, who am I? What am I? I'm just one guy. What's the whole point of you getting upset about it is, they say it's good for us. You're fixing our streets with that, or they're fixing certain things, but do you ever really see it get done? No. So what people don't understand is that fluoride sodium is the base ingredient for all chemical weapons. Who makes it? DuPont. You know what else DuPont makes? Paint. So if you're putting that paint on the inside of your wall inside your house, You got fluoride sodium that's in that paint, and you're exposed to it. And there's so many different things that DuPont has done wrong, but DuPont basically essentially funded a lot of the mechanics of World War II, the weaponries and the tools of war, right? And in exchange, they were given a lot of nonsensical control of our government. But the thing is, in 1947, when they started declaring that Israel was a nation, here's the problem. They gave it to the wrong tribe, right? So the Kazakhstan Jews are not they're not even real Jews.
They're claimed.
Right. And I'm Ashkenazi, like my family has a background of Ashkenazi Jews, okay? We're kind of more like nomad people, which I also have a lot of Native American in my family too. So the interesting thing about the Israel situation, I still believe in what Scripture says. I still believe that Israel is God's people. The Jewish people are God's people, but we are also His people too, through the grace and salvation of Jesus Christ. Do I agree with what they're doing over there? No, I don't. Their methods and their tactics, the way they're handling things. But then again, it's not for me to say, and I really don't give a F because I care more about what's going on here in our own country. When we can clean up our own politicians and clean up our mess here, and then we can start to worry about what Israel's doing. But the thing is that we need to get rid of all these PACs. This is what I want to see happen. All the PACs. I don't care if it's IPAC, APAC. I don't give anything that says PAC after it, even if it's not a registered, like there should be, with a foreign entity. They need to be. There needs to be a barriers put into place where they cannot donate any money. They cannot have any kind of influence over any of our officials or elections or our candidates.
Right.
That's my big complaint with the elections right now and all the political parties. The GOP, the Republican Party and Democrat parties, in my opinion, are a threat to this nation like there's never been one. And they are in violation of the law because they're taking the dark money from foreign sources and foreign-owned corporations and these big corporations that are contributing. They've tried to obfuscate it, but you can still find some of it, which means they're guilty. And anybody that stays with them is guilty because they haven't walked away. And like I said yesterday, it's the same thing as the nurses giving the shots. The nurses that just stayed for money, or the people in the military. I've got a good friend that came on, and he's friends with most of the admirals in the Navy. He was in charge of all active duty personnel for a period of time. And he looked at all his friends who are admirals and says, every one of you should be tried for treason for what you did during COVID. Nobody stood up to fight it. And so at this moment in time, I kind of wonder if God's like sifting at the level of citizenry right now to see whether people will actually stand for the truth, or whether they're just going to go along to get along, or if they want to be part of this complicit crowd, or if they're quite honestly, if they think they're going to change it from the inside, it's too big. You cannot jump in the swamp and expect to change it without being covered with swamp water. It's impossible.
Right.
Well, think about this. Washington, D.C. is kind of like California woodlands. Okay. It's been sitting there and it's been rotting for so long. What's going to happen is at some point, they're going to do something, or they're not going to, or I should say, not do something that they're supposed to do that's going to affect every single American, and that's going to be the match that sets off that fire, and there's going to be no stopping it. I know I've talked to a lot of different people, especially in the intelligence community, about where are we at on the scale of how close are we to a civil war, and the way things are. I mean, right? Since Trump has gotten elected, the meter has gone down quite significantly. But it's starting to go back up. Why? Because people are starting to get exposed to the fact that GOP is no better than the Democrats.
Right.
They're just, it's like when we found out from the Democrats, they were using casting actors for a lot of different things, right? We've already busted the fact that Joe Biden had a body double.
At
Oh,
least one.
You
at
know,
least.
and I always tell my friends, I say, listen, this goes back much, much further and back in the 60s when the Central Intelligence Agency figured out, okay, we need to come up with body doubles because we got to protect our president, right? And they started coming out with the idea about having, the prosthetic mask. That was a real big one. And now 1990 was a landmark one where they came up with the fact that they could clone a sheep named Dolly, okay? But when I worked down in the dumps, one of the things that we saw down there were human banks of clones. So we know that they can clone a person very easily because they have the technology nowadays, and they can
I think they've been doing it for quite a long time.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about what you saw with the banks of clones.
The banks of clones. So, my one here that the DNA company, the my 123 whatever, the ancestry.com, whatever. A lot of those genetics of those clone banks come from those companies. They sell that to kind of in a black market. They sell it to the military contracting companies, and they take their scientists and they start cloning that DNA with a cloned human being, but it doesn't have like what they call a very it doesn't have a fingerprint, right? It doesn't have an identity, doesn't have a fingerprint, but just by inserting a DNA into it, it would then rapidly change the way they look, and eventually, when they wake up, they're kind of in a blank state. But I don't know how they I don't know how they process them, or I don't understand how they do the whole neurological link kind of thing. And then how they get them prepared and get them ready for the whatever it is that they're doing. But I do know they were using it for military applications. That's where they have certain elements of this. They're called the hunters, essentially. But they go hunt things like the dog man, for example, when they know there's a dog man loose. Yeah, they're a very elite group of people that go out. They're very, very elite military. So, but they go out and they hunt the dog man, and they, retrieve. They do like a capture and retrieval kind of thing. But you never see them above the surface, except for when they're doing their job and they come back and that's it.
No, because if the public knew what these people were doing and actually see the information, they would tie things together that made more sense to them. Not this, we didn't evolve. All of the stuff that you're talking about can be explained in scripture.
Well, I'll put it this way. We are, okay, we have this world right here, and we have our government, okay? What's under the ground is another world.
Yep.
A whole different set of citizens, and they have their own government. They are the continuity of the human race, of the government, of everything you can think of. Okay, now when you're thinking about technology, they're so far ahead of us. I mean, I'll put it this way. They have the Tier 3B astrocrafts, which is the triangle.
At least 300 years in my perspective.
Yeah, they can fly these crafts like airplanes, and they can sit from one place to the next place within seconds. Gravity does not affect the pilots because they're inside of a magnetic hub. There's a lot of things that are coming to light. People are going to start to see more things come to light as we start peeling back the layers of the onion. But how far deep will we get to? I hope we can get to the core. I mean, honestly, I would love to do that. But we could solve our food crisis overnight. We could empty out the dumps of all the food. It would feed America for the next 532 years. And that's how much food we have. All the technology can be brought out, and small guys like myself or small companies could be manufacturing this stuff at pennies on the dollar, and we could be essentially everybody would be living in the golden age,
How far can you go and talk about the stuff that you saw down there without the men in black showing up and seriously?
I've had several assassination attempts on my life and on my wife's life, which has gotten so used to it. And I'm at that age right now where I'm in my 50s, and I don't give a fuck anymore because I care about the future generations, about the impact it's going to be on their lives. By not having this knowledge, listen, the government cannot trust you and me and Grizzly and Guy with any information that they've got under the ground that they have no business doing what they're doing or having access to the things that they're doing. So we are in control. We, the people, as a majority, are in control, but we get lied to so much. We get the snippets, I call it the scratch and sniff version of things. When the real things is, we could cure cancer. We could cure AIDS. Oh yeah, they have all that down there. They have the med beds down there. I have a picture of Donald Trump standing next to a med bed. Okay. I have a lot of different things, pictures and things like this of that place. And kind of applied through a third party, but I couldn't take any direct pictures, at the time because we can't bring electronic devices in. But here's what I'm seeing is there's the people that I used to work with. Some of these guys are starting to release. I think they're purposely releasing this information, and so I got enough confidence and said, you know what, I'm going to start talking about this because people need to understand. This is reality. This is life. We're not in a Disney story. And we've got all these wonderful tools that we can have access to, but the big pharma's got to make their money. And so I think what Trump is talking about in the golden age, I think we're going to see everything that's in the dumps come to the surface. And that's going to be the golden age. Is what is the most valued thing in a person's life? It's not money. It's not fame.
It's their health.
It's your health and time. So time gives legitimacy to its existence of whatever it is. And if you're living and you're breathing for 100, 200 years, just think what you can accomplish in 100 to 200 years, that you can see your
great. You're not distracted, if you're not distracted on the materialistic pursuits, right. That's all part of this capture, the satanic capture we're in is going after those things that have no real value, that they don't last. The only thing that really matters is take what the gifts that God's given us, this life, and use it for his purposes to feed each other. I think one of my favorite stories that I heard years ago, and when I heard it, it just resonated with me. I'm sure you've heard it before, but there was a guy that died. Okay, it's a story, guys. There was a guy that died, and he went up to heaven, and God decided to show him around a little bit. So he went past the first room, and this is the story, guys. Okay, so he went past the first room, and there were all these people, and they were trying. There was food. The tables were just stacked with food, and the people were sitting there, and they were starving to death. They had 4-foot forks, and they couldn't reach their mouth, and they were starving to death. And God looked at the guy and said, "This is hell right here." And then they went to the next one, and the same type of a table was laid out in front of them, filled with food, and the people were happy, and they were laughing, and they were smiling and having a great time. And they had 4-foot forks too, but they were using it to feed each other. And I think that's where we're at right now, is that we've been indoctrinated into this feel of scarcity. And so people are just grabbing all the time to fill themselves in the emptiness that's in their hearts. Well, you know what? The emptiness that's in our hearts, it's a lack of God. It's a lack of having a relationship with God Almighty and Jesus Christ, our Savior, who we have everything we could possibly want right here. And the only way you get the only way you heal from this is you got to give it away. You can't hang on to, you can't continue to claw in this constant striving for people's approval of us. For people, why do we want to have status symbols? Because we're looking for people's approval. We're looking to be somebody. Well, guess what? We're already somebody. And the somebody that's probably the most important is the one that's doing the most considered menial job. It's not the ones that are sitting at the top. It's like, I'm going to tell you, I have sat in boardrooms. I have sat with people that are at the top of their game. They're the most soulless, miserable people you will ever meet. And I am running to get out of those spaces because I hate it. To go back and be somewhere where maybe there's nothing other than wildflowers there and sitting quietly. There's an art form to being content. And the Bible talks about content in all states. Whether you have a lot or you have nothing, we can be content. And that's not focusing on it. It's focusing on the invisible world that God has put before us, which feeds our soul, the only thing that lives on forever. The rest of this, our bodies, our health, the things that we have here, they go away.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, I was talking to my youngest daughter the other day, and I told her, I said, the most important thing you need to understand about life is this: you were born into the world with nothing, and you will leave the world with nothing. And the thing that I explained to her was, when I was 16, we just moved into a new town, or a new city. It's called Clear Lake, Iowa, and my dad had bought, this was just a temporary measure at the time, but he bought a mobile home for $500 until we can get everything, all of our stuff moved up. But they were in the process of looking for a house. And so where the high school is located is almost on the other side of town, but in between us is a cemetery. And we would walk through the cemetery, and he was showing us where to walk and how to get to the school. And so halfway through, he stopped us and he said, "I want you to take a look around at all these people that are buried in the cemetery. What is the one thing that they have in common besides being dead?" And my brother and I thought about it for about a good 5-10 minutes. We couldn't figure, what do they have in common, besides being dead? And then my father said, when you take a look at all these people that are dead, the one thing they have in common is wasted talents. The talents that God has given them, they wasted or squandered it. Okay. But very few, and we're talking a minuscule amount of people that have utilized 100% of their skill sets, that has their gifts that God has given them, and they've used it to better humanity. So you have to make a decision in your life from this point forward. Are you going to utilize the gifts that God's given you and understand your identity is in Jesus Christ, nothing else? It's in Jesus. It's not in the clothes that you wear. It's not in the job position that you have. It's not the car that you drive or where you live or any of that stuff. Because at the end of your life, and then he said, time is a thief. Okay. And I didn't understand what he meant. I was 16 at the time. So when he meant time is a thief, time moves by pretty quickly. As you get older and older, you start to realize is I've got less time ahead of me than I do behind me, and so I want to utilize those gifts now when I'm 16, but by learning different things as I go along, and then you realize, how can I help this person? How can I help that person? And not everybody is the same. The situation is not always going to be the same, but it's about being present in the moment when you can help somebody else out. It doesn't matter what it is.
Well, and I think that that's a really important thing. So like the first step in that is laying down our preconceived notions of what we want and stop being a respecter of persons. This is so damaging, where you respect people more than what you respect God has built into you or what God has made you to be. The only one you have to worry about is God, and that goes back to feeling confident in who you are, knowing that God made you. He said you're important, and that He made you exactly perfectly the way He wanted you made for whatever His purposes are, and what He's going to lead you through to learn. Now, I had a friend years ago, and her one daughter was getting off base, and she was really sad. And I said to her too, I said, the main thing is that God uses all things, good and bad, and He turns them into something beautiful. For the time that we're going through right now, we're learning so much about what shouldn't be done and how to retool ourselves out of the satanic system and move into what God had intended for us. And it's a beautiful process, but we're going to have to slug through it a little bit to learn the lesson, because you know what? It's like everything else. If you tell people the easy way out of a problem, will they listen to you? Never, never. They've got to. I mean, listen, think about when you raised your kids and you and say, and do something really bad or stupid, and you kind of sit back and look at them and go, how's that working for you? Did you learn anything yet? Because people have to come to their own conclusions on things, and that's where we are. The quick step is to listen to God and do what God wants us to do. The harder way to go is to have to experience it, so we fall on our faces a few times, get scratched up and hurt, and then move on, But I think laying down those preconceived notions and thinking about what is it, and asking God, what is it you want me to do today? And take all the pressure off yourself, because He doesn't really need us. He loves us as we are, but it's not like He needs us to get the job done. All right. He's got power over everything, including Satan himself. Satan's just a little puke. He's a little puke. And he has no power whatsoever. Not like you have to be really afraid of him. All he can do is, if you're a believer in Christ, all he can do is harass you a little bit and see, test your boundaries, but he's on a leash. God will only let him go so far. And that, I think that therein is the dividing line between those people that are in office, because you can tell when somebody's a Christian and whether they're not. If they're afraid, it's because they do not have the protection of God, to stand under all things and realize, okay, you're going to bring something to me, but I'm still protected by God. So how far you think this is really going to go?
Yeah, there's limit, and that's the thing is, there's limits to everything in this world, and that's the thing that politicians tend to forget. History, as God has said in the Bible, over and over again, He is allowing history to repeat itself over and over and over again. Okay. And I took a look at that and I kept thinking, no, Lord, that's awful. Why aren't we learning from our mistakes? Why can't we just, stop starvation? Why can't we just, why can't you just prevent a baby from dying? All these different things. And what I come to realize is this: we're just passing through this world, because in the end point matters is where we go from this point on out. Am I going to go to heaven because I've received Jesus and accepted Him as my Savior, or am I going to be the person that wants to separate myself as much far from God as possible? And I've heard a lot of sermons, I've heard a lot of preaching, but the one sermon that makes sense to me is God doesn't send anybody to hell. The people send themselves to hell because they want nothing to do with God. So He made an alternative home for those people, And so the way I see this thing in life is this, like you're right about the preconceived notions about things. When I learned a long time ago to give up the preconceived notions about people, because I got stuck on looks. That was my thing. I was stuck on looks. So anybody that looked like my brother or had the same name as my brother Michael, automatically hate them with a fury, with a passion, right? But then when I met some guy that looks just like my brother, and his name was Michael, and it turned out this guy was the most wonderful human being in the whole world, and he has taught me so many different things along the way. My brain just went in overload. I was like, wait a minute, I have this. I've been living by this preconceived notion of this is how things are supposed to be. This is how it works, and then I realized it doesn't. It doesn't work this way. And when I gave that up, I opened myself up to wonderful experiences along the way. I met some pretty incredible people. I've met Hollywood stars, a couple of them. And one of them was she was really wonderful. She was just just a bliss to be around. I could sit in her house for hours and we could just talk about everything and just have fun. And the other guy that I went to, he's a total fucking douchebag from hell. The best thing I could say is he's got to be a resident of Sodom and Gomorrah. That's his whole thing, you know. And so when I go out and I've met people, I met a tow truck driver in the middle of Iowa, on the middle of nowhere, with a little itty bitty kind of shop, and my truck broke down, and he came out 2:00 in the morning. He literally towed my truck to his shop and fixed my alternator belt for free, for nothing. And and I've made every concentrated effort trying to go back and give him something, and he's no, it's just pay forward. He's a very humble guy. So that's the thing you're saying about preconceived notion is that's a part of growing up that people need to understand, is that you can meet some of the most wonderful people in the world, and you can meet some of the worst people in the world, and they can come from all different spectrums,
I got asked recently, what things do you want to accomplish in life yet? And I'm like, I don't really have a plan. Like, I want to see my nation, restored and our families restored. But I have no personal goals right now on some things that sound fun, but it's like I've got a million things that sound like fun to do, but I'm putting it all, I'm open to doing whatever it is that God asked me to do. But my personal plans don't matter. It's like you lay your personal plans aside, go for sometimes like say, okay, I'm going to make sure that whatever I do, it's in service to God. But personal plans, that could change by the minute, depending on what God asks us to do. If we have all of a sudden a total economic collapse at the United States, my plans will probably change a little bit, because what I'll probably be doing is figuring out how to save as many people as I can, because I'm a farmer, right? And so you use those skills you have to do the right thing and to be the most helpful in any situation. Sometimes it might be like right now, filing lawsuits against evil people that are in our government. Not that I'm qualified necessarily to do or not to do anything. It's like, are you willing to step up in areas that you have no idea exactly what's going to happen, as God leads you through it every step of the way and enables you and equips you to do whatever job he asks you to do? And we just lay everything that we've done at his feet anyway. But, I think that that's really important. And also that we never die. We do not die. It's just, where do you go? We're literally a spirit, a soul in a meat suit. Yep. And someday we're going to take this meat suit is going to be gone. Worm food. I'm going to say it right now. It's going to be worm food. And we live on. We never die. And I'm going to ask you guys a couple of questions, because I've been looking into things in the government like remote viewing. And a lot of the people that I know that are in intelligence communities, that's one of their favorite subjects is remote viewing telepathy. And I got onto this track with non-speaking autistic people that they literally are communicating in their networks. And if you don't think they are, look into it a little bit. It becomes absolutely irrefutable that there's more going on, way more going on. Have you ever worked, either of you, with anybody who does remote viewing? Or I can tell you that I've had a lot of experiences in my life, a lot of them that I could talk about in depth with from personal experience. But have you guys known anybody that is like that?
I've personally never had any, but I would like to say this. I know that previous to our most recent reset, we lived in a way that allowed us to communicate without using words or sound, for that matter. And we actually I believe that non-speaking autistic people are closer to the natural state of what we are with an open pineal than you and I, who are speaking with our mouths with a calcified pineal. I wholeheartedly believe that. Autism is magical. And if you really don't understand it and you can't see it, if you've never dealt with anyone who is autistic and seen the superhuman abilities that these people contain in their own little way, and when you do observe it, it's so emotionally powerful that it'll bring the biggest, most sturdy person to their knees. That's what I've witnessed, is the power that autism has. And the only thing I can tie it to is that they're closer to the more natural state of what we used to be, more connected. The Avatar movie, quote unquote. You know what I mean? It's hard to understand without seeing it yourself, unless you really have an open-minded perspective.
I think a lot of people, a lot of us have that, but we're conditioned not to talk about it so much. But I think we need to talk about it, because there are. I just let my friend Chris is going to jump on here a minute, and like me, he's had near an experience, and it changes everything about. It really does change everything about you, and I think some of us were born with a greater propensity for it, and I don't know why. But when you realize that this isn't all, then you make your time count, but there's no pressure on it, because you know what? You're going to have more time. There's no panic in death. When you die, if you've ever seen The Other Side, and I have, so has Chris. And you have too, haven't you, Shawn?
Yes, I have, twice. Actually, once when I was 5 and once when I was 26.
Yeah, and it's like, if you can and have seen that, it changes your focus, and this world becomes strangely dim, and the other side is more real than what it looks like here. It's like, I think that's the best way to say it, is that the colors are richer. Everything seems more real. It's like it's a really there's almost not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. And I remember I did not want to come back.
Yeah.
I did not want to come back at all. And it was like but I had other things to do.
Yeah,
For me, a job to do.
When I was 5, I overdosed on my mom's opium. She just had a total hysterectomy at the time, and at 5 years old, you guys remember those Flintstone vitamins?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the taste of Flintstone vitamins. I thought they were like candy, So I climbed up into the cupboard and I was like literally just eating the Flintstone vitamins. Well, I seen this red jar. And so I opened it up and I started drinking it. And I just remember it tastes really nasty. But the next thing I know, I was laying on on my parents' kitchen floor. I was dead for 47 minutes before I finally woke up, and the doctor had actually already had written me off my time of death like 4 or 5 minutes before, and then 4 or 5 minutes later, then that's when I woke up, and they were just kind of baffled, like, "Oh my gosh, he's alive," Um, but I tried to tell my parents my experience, and they just kind of like, we're not into that kind of stuff, and that's just, you were just dreaming, you were dreaming and stuff. But then years later, when I actually obtained the medical reports, they never told me that I had died, when I was a kid. They never told me that. So when I found out about it, I got the medical report, and I was just kind of like, my mind was blown because they didn't want to validate my experience. And so as a kid, it was kind of something hard to I couldn't talk to anybody about it until I was like 26. And that's when I ended up falling off of a house about 3.5, 4 stories. I was in a coma for 5 days, and I went through another experience where walking in heaven. And the thing is, I'm 10 years old, and Jesus is right there. He's holding onto my hand. He's walking me in. I remember the road was paved with gold bricks. There was these little like mounds. They look like mounds off the side of the gold brick road. And you see a little lamp, like a lamp, or what do you want to call it, like a shepherd's hook, but it's like a lamp on there, like a oil lamp hanging, and the light was burning. But there was light coming out of everything. You could see the mountain in the background, you see the sun in the background, but there was light coming from everywhere. And every time somebody was walking, they were very translucent, like they had this light in them, and they were very translucent. And every time they walked past you, you get this overwhelming sense of love and peace, and just like all your fears, your doubts, your hurt, your pain, it doesn't even exist. And we got to a point where I got to meet the four most powerful women in my life. Two of them I can name off to you today, but the other two I couldn't see their faces. But they were giving me kind of like specific instructions for what my life was going to be. And down the road, I didn't understand it when I was like 5 at the time. And when I was 26, I was even more confused. But then Jesus says, "Okay, you need to go back. I have a purpose and I have a plan for your life." But does he tell me what it is? Absolutely not. So he sends me back to figure that out. And so I have this little thing every now and then with Jesus. It's like, okay, I know you got a purpose, you got a plan for my life, but what the heck is it? What am I doing today? And sometimes he will answer back, but he will answer back in a way that I do not expect. And I know he's sitting up on the throne just laughing his ass off. And so we have this thing, we go back and forth. But the thing is that, having that out of body experience, that had given me some abilities to do certain things. But I've come across and I've worked with people in the military contracting world that have that unique ability to do remote viewing, and they've explained to me how to do remote viewing. And so I've had a couple of times I would try to do the remote viewing, and I got some kind of an experience from it. But I wasn't really sure. And they said, well, just, you write this stuff down like a diary or whatever. Or you draw pictures or things like this. And every now and then, without even thinking about it, sometimes we do remote viewing without even realizing it. It's really interesting because that's one subject, like a lot of other things, like the UFO, aliens. We talk about that stuff. Why are we talking about Nephilims? Why aren't we talking about the domes? Why aren't we talking about, like, more so? I mean, now we're talking about child sex trafficking. That's so prevalent. Or why aren't we talking about why was the government so hung up on getting the Bibles out of schools in 1955? Why were they trying to destroy the family unit? What was their intentions, right? Why are they doing this? And to this day, we have a judicial system that focuses on keeping the family fractured, right? But nobody wants to talk about why those things happen. But it's just like, we have this society where people just say, oh, we don't need to talk about this, hush, hush, hush,
Hey,
So
Chris.
when it comes to remote viewing, yes, we should be talking about it.
Yeah, I think so too. And have you ever had a near-death experience, or have you ever died or seen the other side, Grizzly? Okay.
So I was stung in my armpit like 6 to 7 times when I was like 3.5, 4 years old, and they had to bring me back. I do remember soft comfort and peace, but it was so long ago. I don't have vivid memory of speaking to anybody personally. But my life brings me to certain understandings that this stuff is definitely possible, or probable for that matter. We use less than 7% of our brain's abilities. There's a bunch of DNA that they call junk or garbage DNA. All of this stuff leads me to believe that we are by far a lesser version than what we should be in the first place, for that matter.
Well, I think we get distracted with the whole Satanism stuff out there, and
Right.
that's unfortunate,
Right. Well, and that's something else that's happened to me too. My right out of high school, I had a son, and he passed away really young, and so I dove into some stuff that I probably shouldn't have dove into because I was angry. I read a good portion of the Necronomicon and Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible. All the while, I was also still reading my Bible. But that part of my life allowed me to be familiar with symbolism and the idea that this stuff is actually probable.
Yeah, I had
Excuse
Chris
me.
back on here again because Chris died, and Chris and I've known each other for many years here, and he died, and what happened to him was he's got very, very vivid memories, and it's kind of interesting. I'll see if you can jump back on here again. What happened? Where'd you go, Chris? You were there just a minute ago. Let's see. Yeah, I think there's so much to said. I've got a couple people that I know that are experts in remote viewing and such. And I think that this is one of those things that, though we may be uncomfortable with a subject, I'd kind of like to know, there's some things that I'd like to talk to. We talk about everything on this show, and I don't want to shy away from any subjects, whether it's things that people are ready to talk about or not. We need to talk about everything.
Well, I wholeheartedly believe that out-of-body experience is a real thing. I mean, we are light beings. We are vibrations. We are energy. We are everything that would make that possible.
Yeah.
And so, this being said, I don't personally disagree with any of it. I think it's all very true.
Yeah, I think it's worth pondering. Well, I wish Chris would come back on because he's got one heck of a story and in what it was like, and he was looking at things and what it looked like and how he came back, and he was not ready to come back. He did not want to come back either.
You know, you were talking earlier about, when we were talking about making sacrifices, right? About our purpose, like our divine purpose is given us. It's not about material things, but it's about being in service for other people, right?
Yeah.
And I mentioned earlier there was a story. His name was Jackie Custos. This was during the brutal winter of 1778. 77 to 78, and George Washington's army was holed up at Valley Forge, and everybody there was pretty much starving and freezing, and the morale was at rock bottom. Well, here's this little 15-year-old kid who lied about his age to get into the Continental Army, and he's got this little drum. He's got one eye missing, and he's going around just banging his drum, singing cadence and everything else. And one night, George Washington is like, comes outside, he's going to go for a walk, and he hears this cadence, he hears the drumming. He goes over to see what it is, and he sees this little wiry, like 14, 15-year-old kid with this oversized drum standing on a wooden crate, and he's playing this song, and he sees how it's like boosting the morale of all of these guys, right? And he thinks this is just wonderful because they had so many people were deserting over this time, and there was the desertion rate was getting higher and higher. And so here's this little kid, Jackie, and so the next morning he calls the sergeant at arms to go get this kid, Jackie. And he would think that Jackie would be kind of in awe to be standing in front of George Washington, but it was quite the opposite. Here's this 14, 15-year-old kid. He's like, hey, Mr. Washington, have you ever heard? Did you hear this new song that I created, and I was playing for the guys last night? Did you hear the song? And he's like, yeah, I've heard the song. He says, well, can I play it for you again? And he's like, yeah, sure. And so he's playing the song, and it was called Liberty Thumb. And so Washington turned around and said, you know what? He says, I don't care about the fact that you lied about your age, but what you're doing, the work that you're doing, and inspiring these men, it's not only increasing the survival rate, but it's also boosting the morale. And so he said, I'm going to make you our a morale officer. So you were going to be an official officer, but your job is to lift the morale of everybody here in this camp. And so as the days went on, and they were getting ready to move out of the valley to go on to continue fighting, Jackie had gotten sick with the camp disease, and he had died on the same day they had moved out. So George Washington writes in a letter to his sister years later about this little boy, and 15-year-old boy, his name is Jackie Custos, right? Now, the thing was that got me about this particular story is he didn't write down what the lyrics were. Okay, he just said this was the name of the song, but he never wrote down what the lyrics were. And so I got so moved by this. I thought, this kid is my hero. I mean, he's 14, 15 years old, and he's in the worst possible condition. And anybody who's ever been in the military knows that when you're in those kind of conditions, it is hell. It's literally hell on earth. But you got this 14, 15-year-old kid, just a spitbuck, who just goes and just plays that drum and just raises the morale and just, cussing and swearing and just doing the guy thing. And everybody is just like filled with the Holy Spirit all of a sudden, And I'm like, I love this kid. I wish I could have met him, because I want to know what the lyrics were, and so it drove me nuts. So for 4 days, I sat there and writing, like trying to think of what Jackie would say, and then I finally got this whole thing composed, and I got this soundtrack, this single, and I ran it by a couple of friends that were in the military, and I'm like, do you think this is what Jackie would have played when he was at Valley Fort George? And they listened to it and they got back to me and said, "Oh yeah, I'm definitely for sure. This is exactly what Jackie would play." And I thought, okay, this is great, And so I thought, okay, I'm going to publish this. I'm going to put this song out there so that people can actually listen to it. And if if you're feeling down about what's going on with our government or whatever's going on in your life, just hit this button and play the song. And I hope the spirit of Jackie kind of revives people.
I was trying to get it off of my text message. Could you put it in the private chat, the song that you sent over, and I'll play it?
Sure.
Yeah, do it there, and then I'll just I can move it. I can move it there quicker or easier than I can off my text messages on my phone. Okay. So while we're waiting for that, we're coming to the end of the show here, and we kind of really took a departure from the DNR, but I think sometimes there's time to pause and encourage each other a little bit, and I think that's important too. So you had your music festival, Shane, and tell everybody what you did up by Trout Lake. That was kind of cool.
So I had planned an acoustic campfire gathering, and invited as many musicians from the area that felt like coming out and just playing in the public out, just to fill the campground for this last weekend, Memorial weekend anyways. And actually had a decent turnout. We did Saturday and Sunday, and I had musicians from Jesus, seems like I had one that lives in Ohio who comes up once a month, and a handful of them from the area, all different types, all different genres, all different ages. And we just got together and felt it out and played what felt good to us. And we did a handful of cover songs, obviously. I mean, we never met each other before, and we blended quite well. We got the word out. We probably had altogether right around 60 different people passing through to witness and so on. And it was broadcast on Facebook through different pages. And it actually worked out so well that I'm probably going to be doing it at least once a month from this point on up there at the campground.
That's awesome. I can't wait to come up and visit with everybody again and hang out with everybody. What a great group of people. It's really a wonderful thing when we meet other people who are like us and we can just hang out like family.
Right.
It's wonderful.
Well, there's power in like-minded individuals, especially when gathered together. I'm really hoping that we can get this more exposure, because the closer they get to the bottom of the lake, the more opportunity they're going to have of just wiping their hands of the project and removing the dam. So I'm trying to just talk about it as much as possible and trying to come up with a plan.
Well, like I said, I'm working on the legal stuff right now and seeing what we can do to the best way to attack this. But we need people. We need people that are willing to stand up and honestly be a force that they can't turn their back on. That There's so much pushback that they can't get away from it. That's the number one thing that we need to do. And then and hold them accountable. I'm going to go ahead and play Shawn's song. Let's see if you guys can hear it.
It's silent for some reason.
Is it silent? Okay.
Yeah,
I'm not sure why I can't get it to go through my. Sometimes this happens when I try to play music. You know what? I'm going to put this on my Telegram channel because for some reason sometimes this happens. And unfortunately, when I'm online, I can't do enough tech to get it to work. So, all right, go to my Telegram channel and I will repost this. Oh, you know what? Let me try that a minute. Hang on. Talk amongst yourselves a minute and give me a second. Maybe I can figure this thing out.
How you doing this morning, Shawn? Oh,
Can I put this in your in that present thing?
there you go.
In the what? Yeah, you can do that. I'll just stop here. You can play it. Let's see if it'll come in that way.
Okay.
Okay, I think. Oh, we got Chris back too. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Hey, we were talking about near-death experiences and dying and seeing what's on the other side.
I've done that one.
Yeah, I know you have. You got a great story for that. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that while Shawn's getting his music up, and then it's a great story. I think everybody would be blessed by this.
Well, I was working, delivering these equipment, and I had a friend with me. We were driving to the destination. Anyway, the tires, it was a rental, went flat. I don't know if it was one tire, two tires, but I'm driving along, and it was like I was on a sheet of ice. I could barely control the direction the vehicle was going. Anyway, I was going through an intersection. I was at a T. All I saw was the cars on my right were like looking at me because they knew I wasn't slowing down for this red light. I had a choice to make. I could either go up the ramp and around the turn, but then up high, thinking I would have gone straight over the ramp, hit the trees, and then gone down to the ground. Or I could squeeze right through between that car and a red light or guardrail and go on the grass and stay on the ground, and I'd still hit the trees. So I took that option. And the tree was wider than the car itself. It was a big tree. It didn't move at all. So I hit that tree. I was wearing my seatbelt. The passenger was not. And I remember waking up and looking at him, and he was telling me that he was nauseous. I said, that's because you have a concussion. And I remember seeing his head hit the windshield because it was cracked. And so I said, it's okay. Just do what you got to do. And then I remember kind of looking to my left. I didn't see anything. And then next thing I know, I wake up in the hospital at about, I don't know what time of morning it was. It was 3 or 4 in the morning. And there was a nurse taking my temperature. I was apparently in the ICU. And she said, so how do you feel? I said, I don't really feel anything. She said, do you feel cold, or do you have a fever, or do you feel hot? I said, no. And she was looking at the thermometer, and she said, are you sure you don't feel like any chills or anything? I said, no. She said, let me take this temperature again. She took it again. She said, this temperature must be wrong. She said, I'm going to go get another thermometer. And I said, why? What's it say? She said, it says you have 104 temperature. I said, well, I don't feel like it. So I remember her leaving. The whole point of that part was she told me that that my liver was lacerated, and she said internal bleeding. If internal bleeding occurs, that your temperature will rise, And so I guess that was the whole purpose of her taking my temperature. I found all this out later. And I remember when she left, I looked over at the blood pressure machine, and the blood pressure machine numbers were like going up and down, like they kind of flicker up and down. The numbers go up and down a little bit. But looking at it longer, I noticed the numbers were they were going down, but they weren't going back up. And then I remember seeing the window and then the bathroom, beyond my feet was the opening to the door to the bathroom. I looked to the left, and on my left was the sliding glass doors that the nurse walked through. But then they turned black, like a blinder. So like a horse blinder, I couldn't see anything on my left side. It was just all black. Then as I turned to look at the bathroom, I turned back around to see the blood pressure machine, that was gone. The window, and it was all kind of gray. It was like a cloud. And the wall was like gone. The window was gone. That was like a rolling, like a moving cloud, like gray. I looked over my feet again to the bathroom, and it was like not a bathroom anymore. It was like a big, gigantic room. I went into that room, not physically, but I went into that room, and it was huge. It was like, let's say, twice as big as a gymnasium in your high school.
So your spirit had left your body.
Yeah. I definitely, at that point, I didn't even really figure it out yet. I mean, I wasn't cognitive, so to speak, of what was going on. And the walls weren't walls to this oversized gymnasium. It was like all clouds, like. And then I remember going up, like way up, and I'm looking down, and I see this long rectangle, and I see this light shining down on the rectangle. And so immediately I went, not willingly, but I went right down on top of the table, and I look, and it's me, it's my face. And then the next thing I know, I'm like flying, but not in a hospital. I'm like in this other world. And I see the beautiful, like the stream of water below me was like crystal clear. The grass was green, like a crayon green, not like the green we see in grass today. It's not green. That's not green. That's like got a dark. It's like a dark green. It's like what we've done to it, The clouds were like perfectly white. I mean, really, really white. The colors were unbelievable. It was like I was in a different earth. There was no like houses or factories or anything like that. It was like I was just flying over this beautiful planet, right? And I had this feeling inside that I never had before. It was like a feeling of love, but it was so strong that it could lift you up. It could lift a mountain up, I mean, it had the strength. I mean, it was so strong that I didn't have time to think of anything scary, or will I fall, or where is anybody, or is there fear or anything. The only thing I felt was love. There were no emotions attached, nothing. It was so awesome. I wanted to stay there, when I came back. But when I woke up, and then I remember flying. I was flying real fast at some points, and it was like I had no body. It was just my eyes. Like I could just see everything that was in front of me, but nothing behind me. And I would be flying, like at one point, like say let's say 100 yards over the water, and then I was way up in the clouds another minute. It was like different heights and stuff. It was like I was being controlled or taken, but I had absolutely no control over where I was going, anything. It was almost like my job was just to see what was going on, like I was being shown something.
Was God there?
God was definitely there. He was inside me. I believe God is love. I think that's the whole point. It's not that God is a man with white hair and wearing sandals and with a staff, and because he's afraid he's going to step on a rock. It's not that kind of a God. I don't think there is that kind of a God. I think God is nothing but love. And I think that God gives every human being a piece of that love, because we all have that. We've all fallen in love. We know what love is, or what we determine what love is, but it's absolutely nothing compared to what it is where he is, because it takes away every negative, anything that could possibly, that Satan could possibly give you or tempt you with. It's not there. It's nothing but it's just awesome. When I woke up, I didn't want to be there. I wanted to go back. And I was looking at, when I woke up the next day, like about 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And I remember wanting to go right back out that window because I could feel it leaving me. And that energy that was leaving me, I wanted to go with it. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to stay there. And just then these nurses ran in, these 3 nurses. Chris, you're alive, you're alive. I'm like, yeah, I hope so. And I had this feeling of like looking at them like they were my children, like I was their father. I had that. It was a weird, like I was looking at them from outside, looking in, like they were my kids. And he left me with a lot that I didn't know at that time. It came in like months, years. Things came to me, and like when I came back, I had absolutely no fear anymore of death. I had no want for a 2-car garage and a white picket fence and a giant house. I had no wants for anything. I don't want for anything. I'm happy having whatever he allows me to have. It's, he's basically, I know he's, from that moment on, well, he kind of taught me that he's been looking after me this whole time and has been with me this whole time. I just hadn't realized it. And I think that it was his way of saying, come home, come to me. Don't go with the world, what the world has to offer, because it doesn't have anything to offer. And I, to this day, can remember what happened back in, I think that was 2002. I'll never forget the experience. And it stays with me in my mind like it happened yesterday. And
it feels more real than it is here, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I've had, it wasn't a dream. I know this it's like I've had dreams before that were impactful, but I don't remember any of them. I can't remember any of them. This was no dream. This is reality. And this is a reality I can't wait to go back to. But I know that I still have temptations that come, and I know that I still have the world sort of trying to present itself as the best thing that there is. I also see that people are creating their own God. I also see that people are creating their own, like they're the shit and there's nothing else. And they just don't know. They don't know, because if they did, they wouldn't care about those things that they're presently setting up themselves. I heard one person speak earlier about, I think they were talking shortly about the New World Order or something like that. I don't know. But it's funny because last night I saw a show, old TV show called The Outer Limits. Now this has nothing to do with what I was just talking about, but it was a bunch of guys sitting at a table in this TV show, and the guy at the very head of the table, you know what he said? He says, what we've got to do is we got to save humanity. We got to give humanity, we've got to get all the nations to come together to create this sort of peace where we can all have the same thing. And he goes, but the only way we're going to be able to unite all the nations is to create a fear that every person will be able to relate to, and that will make everybody come together. That's the New World Order. They were talking about it on a TV show on the Outer Limits. That's exactly what they want to do. And seeing Dr. Stephen Greer, he basically in the 90s was talking about the same thing about with what the shadow government that we do have wants to facilitate upon this whole world, which is to make us think that there's UFOs by providing these so-called UFOs and scaring us all to a point where we give up all our rights that God gave us. God gave us all these rights, not man. But what they want to try and do is take over everybody by taking all of our rights away and kind of corralling us all together and being basically a technocratic, corporate static, if you will, a takeover, a big takeover. And I think that's what's going on right now. Now, I don't think they're going to succeed, not in my lifetime. And I think they have a hell of a fight, because I think that with our leader, God, imposing his will on Donald Trump, and I think things are going to be turned around. He had like 3 attempts on his life already. I heard 5, but I'm going to say 3. And God is intervening in every attempt.
It's really amazing, isn't it? What a time to be alive. I really hope everybody understands the significance of all of us who were chosen to be here now. This wasn't an accident. With the gifts that God's given us and the things that we do and the things we're learning, there's no coincidences here. There's no accidents. And our God's world is much bigger than what we can even comprehend. So, there's some steps to get away from this materialistic, satanic world. And the first thing is get rid of the materialism, stop worshiping Stuff Mart out there, and realize that if you can sit quietly, just even for an hour a day, turn everything off and just sit quietly and have some peace and ask God to talk with you. You know what? I think you'll see amazing things happen that you never thought were possible, but you got to get the clutter out of the way and the preconceived notions and all that, and just focus on God, and he will lead you. It's an amazing journey when you detach a little bit from what is here. And that goes from walking away from jobs, from political parties, from some of the things that we know are bad. We're going to have to detach from these things. If we say we follow God, that means there's kind of a dividing line there. You can't necessarily have it both ways all the time. There's a choice to be made. And every one of us is responsible for those individual choices on doing the right thing, not just following the crowd.
I agree, and I also look at it like this: like if you lost your house or your car today, would you fear that you couldn't get around, or would you have enough faith in God not to be afraid that He'll provide for you, that He'll take care of you? Today, right this moment, bam, you've got no car.
And Chris,
would
you know what?
Faith enough in God to believe that He'll get you home safely.
Hey, Chris, I'm going to go back to the first time I met you. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. That's the difference between faith, wondering by oneself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. Well, with that said, this is a great show today, and I'm glad we got out in the weeds a little bit from traditional things we talk about here, because we're always going to have challenges and problems. That's okay. It exercises our ability to think through problems and actually make choices, make ethical choices, and learn how to exercise our decision-making processes, the way we think about things and choices. That's okay. We're learning, and I think that's exactly what God intended for us to do. This path has been laid out by God, and it's going to be okay. So, you know, I normally pray at this point in time. Do any of you guys have last words? And then we're going to pray, but I'll let one of you guys to pray if you would.
Go ahead.
I hear the birds.
I'm all talked up.
You what?
I've said enough.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and pray. Here we go, guys. It's that time of the day, boys and girls. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Chris and Shawn and Shane and all the wonderful people that are willing to come on this show. Guy and Heidi and Lynde, all fighting the DNR and in their area. It's fantastic. And really, how much you've equipped us with at this point in time to do good research and find good information and solutions to what we're facing today. Thank you so much for equipping us as being able to stand up and be adults and do what needs to be done, and then also bringing us back to the truth of your love for us, the fact that you're our father and we're mothers and fathers and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts and all that sort of thing. You've given us so many wonderful people in our lives, and your family keeps getting bigger, which is wonderful. All who want are welcome, and all who knock are welcome in your kingdom. And we've got a wonderful future ahead of us. Thank you so much for giving us experiences, for giving us discernment and wisdom, and the ability to walk away from bad things when we know it. You put it in our hearts that we know. Give us the strength to do what it is that you ask us to do this day and every day, and help us to walk out there with a smile, realizing that every action that we make can bring glory to you and healing to others if we make that choice to do so. I ask your blessings and your favor on every single person here today. Shane, Shawn, Chris, Guy, and everyone listening today. We ask a special blessing on President Trump and General Flynn, on Admiral Rogers, and all these wonderful people who have gone before us to help and to do your will and fight for not only this nation, but your kingdom. Thank you so very much. You've been a great friend to us, and we want to be friends to you. In Jesus Christ's precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
There you go. Okay, boys and girls, that part of the show. Ding, ding, ding. Go to BrandenburgForGovernor.com, because I'm the best non-conceiver who's ever not conceived in the history of the United States of America. And I want to have a discussion with President Donald J. Trump in cowboy boots. We'll settle the thing of who wears them better, because I wear them every day and I shovel manure in it. So I am a perfect person for pointing out what really what shit is and how to get rid of it, right? And we've got a lot of stuff in our government. We've got a lot of shit in our government that needs to be shoveled out. Let's just be real here. And so I think that's the step we have to go on. But we've also got that stuff in our own lives that we're learning every day to separate from the nonsense and manure, and also the fact that sometimes God needs manure to grow a garden. It's okay. It's part of the process. So I thanks for being here today. I'm going to be taking tomorrow off because actually I am a farmer and we have hay to move around tomorrow. So have a great weekend. Oh, let me forward that. Got to invite everybody to come here this weekend. Please show up at this. Remember, I am the I've got it.
I've got that song loaded up for you if you want to play it.
Do that too. So that's right. Thanks for reminding me. Here, I'm going to put this up a minute. Remember, come and join us at the meeting this weekend as the chairman of the Constitution Party in Michigan. I'd like to invite everybody to come to that. And we need people that want to run for office, not establishment hack politicians, but actual real people. And that's what we're going to do. So come to that. I'm going to end the show here on, let's see, with let's see if I can put it up here. I don't know why it's not coming up, Shawn. I think I'm in the wrong window. It should be there and it's not coming up. Boy, somebody doesn't want this thing to play, do they?
Huh.
That's odd. Well, we'll do it again some other day, and I'll figure out how to get it up here. Okay. So, but have a great weekend. Thanks for being here, everybody. God bless you all. God bless all those whom you love, and God bless America. Make it a great day. It's up to each and every one of us to do that and do our part, not just politically, but as just a good human being. Be a great human being. Be that friend to everyone you meet that you want to come in to your life. Be that person. And stay in the line, guys. I'm going to end this stream, and then we'll talk afterwards.